This is the weekend grab bag for the 23rd of March 2025 and I'm Granniopteryx. I'm on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute and Minds. So the big story of the week, as far as I'm concerned, in fact possibly the big story of the month, is the return of the astronauts. It's not just that they had been stranded for, 8 months. And it's not just that NASA couldn't get them back. The government organisation that put them in space could not get them back. It's that a private company of a sort brought them back. The brainchild of a single man. Now, obviously, they have a lot of connection with with government agencies. Not all of this was SpaceX, but it was a private enterprise, and that means so much for the furtherance of space travel. And just think, what would it be like if every single aeroplane in the sky had been put there by the government? That's how it is. Now we don't depend on the government to go to our, package holidays in Tenerife. In fact, if aeroplanes were only the provenance of the government, then there would be no package holidays to Tenerife because governments just don't do that sort of thing. Now, it'll be a long time before we're doing package holidays to Mars, but that's a great sign. So, if you'll forgive the hackneyed sound effects, I'm just going to show the docking of the SpaceX, I think it was called the Dragon, wasn't it? With let's call it the rescue craft docking with the space station. So let me just get onto this and we'll have a little fun with this. Well, what did you expect from a science fiction fan like me? Yeah, and then there was the splashdown, of course. Isn't that one of the most beautiful sights you could ever see? And it didn't end there, because other creatures who share our planet came to do homage to the newly arrived spacecraft. You see the dolphins. I thought that was absolutely amazing, a wonderful achievement and a real step on the pathway to the stars. Oh gosh, I'm sounding like a 1950s film narrative, aren't I? Okay, well, to bring us down to earth, we have Tommy Robinson. He made an appeal against the solitary confinement that he's been in since he was sent to jail for 18 months. He should be out by July. But he is in solitary confinement. Now, I've heard that some of the arguments that the prison governor gave for keeping him in solitary confinement, and they are all perfectly reasonable. There is nowhere in the prison system that is safe for Tommy Robinson. At least that's what they say in ordinary prisons. I'm not so sure about an open prison. That might be all right. Or they could easily just keep him under house arrest. I mean, there are ways of doing that. So he doesn't actually have to be in prison. But given that he is in prison, the arguments that he wouldn't be safe outside are quite valid. The other idea was that other prisoners who aren't likely to do him any harm could be allowed to associate with him for a period during the day so that he's not on his own all the time. But the prison governor was worried that this would lay those prisoners open to being bullied by the Muslim prisoners in the rest of the prison. Now, nobody seems to be bringing up the subject of why this is happening. I'm not talking about why he's incarcerated. Everyone's taking it for granted that he's not safe in prison, that the Muslim prisoners will murder him given half a chance. And everybody accepts that as perfectly, reasonable. That's a bad sign, isn't it? So, of course, The Guardian reported it as the far-right activist Tommy Robinson has been refused permission to launch a legal challenge against his prison conditions. The risk from other prisoners was cited in written submissions by lawyers for the Justice Secretary to back up the decision to locate him in a segregation unit at HMP Woodhill in Milton Keynes. A lifer in the prison planned to kill Robinson, and two other prisoners plotted to attack him to gain kudos and notoriety, a High Court was told on Thursday. I can imagine that would be true, yes. I mean, there is a problem here. I don't think the government wants him in solitary confinement. The question is how they are going to make sure that he comes out of prison alive. And the fact is, he shouldn't be in prison anyway. It's a civil offence he committed, and he could easily have served it as, in exceptional circumstances, as house arrest, couldn't he? OK, well, that's the Tommy Robinson thing. Again, it's not right, and it's pretty much a stain on, it's how much more stained can the British justice system get? Not much. It's one of so many blots on the British justice system that you can't really see it most of the time. OK, the next one is the substation fire in Heathrow Airport. What happened was that a substation, not in the airport, but very close to it, I'm pretty sure that the airport would have got at least some of its power from the substation, if not all. So the airport was shut down. So here we are, that's right. Here are all the 1,300 planes. Let's go through that again. 1,300 planes had to divert That's quite a spectacular number of planes, isn't it? But you see, there's an important point here. All those planes the flights were disrupted. The airport closed down for a day. We don't know yet what caused the substation to blow up in such a spectacular way, but the idea that it might have been sabotage, of course, cannot be simply dismissed. And this is a problem with our society now. If it was sabotage, the country is not prepared for that sort of warfare. I mean, we have plenty of enemies and they can all get at us in that sort of way. And it's something that modern societies generally have to think of, but London in particular, seeing as it is a hub for the world, there is a bit of a problem here. I mean, yeah, just look at those aeroplanes. Right, well, that's the fire in Heathrow. Ah, yes, and I simply have to mention Snow White, don't I? Because everybody's talking about how dreadful it is. I haven't seen it, so I can't really do a critique of it, but I can say that a few people have mentioned how frightening the dwarfs are. And instead of using real dwarfs, they've done CGI dwarfs, which somehow clash with the live action. To say that Disney's, this is in the, what's it called, the New York Vulture. To say that Disney's live action remake of Snow White has faced some backlash is more than just an understatement. At this point, the controversy surrounding the project has swallowed the movie itself. The dramas cut across the political spectrum from the MAGA rejection of Rachel Zegler's anti-Trump comments and Latina identity to the leftist rebuke of Gal Gadot's staunch Zionism and past IDF service. As it's so often the case, the attempt to stave off controversy has only created new problems. For a more glaring example, one need only look at the film's dwarfs. Though dropped from the title, all 7 are still here. But seeing them on screen in all their garish glory, even lifelong fans of the original movie will find themselves wishing the dwarfs had been excised from the story entirely. So they are described here as CGI monstrosities. These dwarfs do not resemble humans of any size. Their plasticky skin has an artificial sheen that makes them look like they'd crack if they fell over. At best, they recall garden gnomes enchanted to life by a particularly sadistic witch. Okay, so that's the thing. And that's because they didn't want to use proper dwarfs because it wasn't politically correct. And I have suggested some new names for these dwarfs instead of the happy, sleepy, dopey or whatever it is. Who can remember all of them? Okay, so I have a list of names. Hey, there's only 6 here. Oh, right. Well, unfortunately, this picture has only 6. So let's carry on. Wokey, PC, corny, preachy, tritely, off to the side here, creepy and schlock. Okay, well, that's my nod to the new edition of the new version of Snow White and the 7 Wokes. Okay, next. Now we have the snap election in Canada. Mark Carney, the Canadian Prime Minister, will apparently be calling a snap election in April. Mr. Carney, who replaced Justin Trudeau as head of government, will announce the dissolution of the Canadian Parliament on Sunday. Oh, well, that's today, isn't it? Well, we'll see. This news might not be exactly right by the time it goes out. with voting to take place on April the 28th. While his Liberal Party have long been lagging behind the Conservatives, they've recently closed the polling gap to within a few points since Mr. Carney was elected. Pierre Poilievre, the Conservative leader, has been hamstrung by his association with Donald Trump after the US president repeatedly suggested he could annex Canada as the 51st state. Yeah, I'm sorry, it's a big problem, that, because I was sort of hoping that Poilievre would just walk into office. But, with this problem with Trump, that might not happen. And as Liz Truss said, Carney has made a career out of being wrong. I don't have much confidence in Canada's future with him at the helm. OK, and the next one, Ask Rachel in the Telegraph. My wife, hang on a minute, this needs making a bit smaller. OK, yeah, that's better. Ask Rachel. My wife has developed unattractive wrinkles that put me off sex. What should she do? I'm sorry, you fellas, but really, honestly, what should she do? What about what he could do? I mean, he could wear a blindfold, couldn't he? This week, Rachel advises a man who's affected by his ageing wife's face and a woman who has a big problem with a new lover. I'll just deal with the wrinkly woman. Sorry, mate, if you're interested in that. Now, dear Rachel, my wife and I have been together for more than 50 years. She's an amazing person, kind, passionate, caring and fun to be with. Our relationship has moved on from what you call the swinging from the chandeliers stage and has settled into occasional sexual encounters, which we still enjoy greatly. This may sound like a perfect situation, but so they're well into their 70s, he says there. But there is a problem. She's developed very deep, unattractive facial wrinkles. She's in her mid-70s. You oaf. Goodness me, isn't it awful that this woman had to take 50 years to discover that her husband's a total oaf. So anyway, she's got wrinkles and I have a problem with this, he says. And whenever she comes to me with a certain twinkle in her eyes, I just close my eyes and think of England. This may make me seem uncaring and superficial, but I know that she's unhappy with the situation as she spends a fortune on lotions and serums, none of which actually do anything. No, they don't, you see, because old Father Time is like a steamroller. You might put lotions on, but he's still going to flatten you. Look, what I would say, dear Anon. Rachel says, well, there are two reactions. There's emotional and practical. The practical ones will be for, plastic surgery or that sort of thing. And the emotional one is, I don't know what the emotional one. I know what my emotional reaction to that is. It's that he's an oaf. It's not that the problem isn't really that she's old and wrinkly. I mean, she is old and wrinkly. So is he. And my guess is that what's happened is he sees his wrinkles in her face. Her wrinkly face reminds him that he's old and wrinkly. He thinks he's still in his 30s. And then he's having sex with an old woman. And what I would suggest is that perhaps he just grows up. OK, well, that's my advice to Mr. Can't Stand My Wife because she's so wrinkly. All right, what's the next story? Yeah, this is a pretty nasty one. This is posted by somebody called Riley Gaines. Female administrators barricaded girls in a locker room after they expressed their discomfort with undressing in front of a boy. What a surprise. She literally stood guard in front of the door so they couldn't leave. And here's the thing. Deerfield Middle School administrators forced teen girls to change in front of boy in school locker room. And this is the story in the Chicago Tribune. A Deerfield Middle School has been thrust into the national spotlight after a student's parent filed a civil rights complaint with the Department of Justice and went on Fox News over a transgender student using the girls' locker room. Nicole Georgas, the parent of a girl at Shepherd Middle School, appeared on America Reports last week and spoke during the Deerfield Public Schools board meeting on March the 13th, accusing school staff of forcing her daughter and other students to change their clothes with the transgender student. Georgas said the district is in violation of federal policy, pointing to recent executive orders signed by President Donald Trump banning transgender athletes from women's and girls' sports. Allowing transgender people into female bathrooms erodes female privacy and safety, she said, and her daughter's well-being, privacy and mental health. In a statement, the school district said students are not required to change into gym clothes in front of others in locker rooms and have multiple options to change in a private location if they wish. So I suppose there's a big open room and then there must be cubicles. But that's not the point, is it? The fact is that the girls would be forced into cubicles, I'm guessing here, while the boy, sort of lords it over the open space in the middle. And it said here that the girls wanted to come out of the locker room and they were barricaded in. And the school administrator, according to this, stood guard in front of the door so they couldn't leave. And I consider that very bad form. Anything you want to say about that? Put it in the comments. Right, now, yes, Linda Snell is a fictional character in a radio soap opera called The Archers. I have mentioned it before. There's a fictional village called Ambridge in a county called Borsetshire, or Borsetshire to anyone in America. And Linda Snell is a local character. And she is a bit of an interfering busybody, really, and she has a horribly patronising voice. So it may be that somebody in the BBC thought they'd be making fun of her. They wanted to bring Ramadan into The Archers. And the way they did it was by having Linda Snell fasting for Ramadan in sympathy with the Muslims. And this caused a lot of exasperated talk from people who are getting fed up with BBC wokery. Now, as I said, the writer may have been making fun of it because Linda Snell is just about the least sympathetic character in the whole cast. But even so, I think it was a bit of a disgrace, really. And then I thought, well, she was fasting for Ramadan. So I thought, how many other religions do we have in this country where people fast? The Jains fast. They fast on quite a few occasions by the looks of things. Birthdays and anniversaries. Well, let's start at the top. I do apologise if there's mispronunciations here. Paryushana, that's the most important Jain festival. And the Paryushana lasts for 8 days and 10 days, depending on what sort of Jain you are. And then there's Proshadvopavasa. This is a fast that's observed on the 8th and 14th day of each lunar fortnight. And then there are other holy days such as Diwali, Mahavir, Jayanti and Akshaya Tritiya. And there are birthdays and anniversaries. Jains may fast on their own birthdays and fast to atone for sins. And so that's the Jains. Then there are Jews. They fast 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 days in the year. And there are the Hindus, normally Tuesday and Wednesday, or all days, any or all days for Krishna. This person here says, my family does it on Fridays. And, apparently it depends on your Ishta, whatever that is. In Tibetan Buddhism, there's a practice called Nyung Nye, when you alternate fasting days. So you can have different sorts, like just lunch and nothing else, or no liquid and no food. Let's see what else. This is also Buddhist, more full moon, new moon, first quarter, third quarter. All right. Baha'is, there are Baha'is in Britain, and they fast as a discipline for the soul. They've got a 19-day fast for Baha'u'llah, designated a 19-day period of fasting each year, immediately before the Baha'i New Year. And then the Christians, of course, Ash Wednesday and Good Friday. So they're obligatory days of fasting. Fridays during Lent are days of abstinence. For members of the Latin Catholic Church, the norms on fasting are obligatory from age 18 to 59. So Linda Snell might be a bit older than that. In Western Christianity, fasting is observed during the oh dear, that should be made smaller. Yeah. In Western Christianity, fasting is observed during the 40-day season of Lent. In the Catholic, Lutheran, Anglican, Moravian, Methodist, Western Orthodox, United Protestant churches and certain Reformed churches to commemorate the fast observed by Christ during his temptation in the desert. Ash Wednesday and Good Friday are nowadays emphasised by Western Christian denominations. What else? Coptic Orthodox stay off sex as well to give themselves time for fasting and prayer. Now, I don't know if there are any Lakota in Britain, but they also have fast days to do with the sacred white buffalo. So if you want to get international, you can do the Lakota fast as well. I'm sure there are many more. The whole point is that if you're going to fast in sympathy with other religions, I don't think there's a day in the year when you'd be eating. Right, and I thought that was a perfectly ridiculous thing for the BBC to do, but then the BBC is perfectly ridiculous. Okay, and now I always like to end on a happy note, so let's go to Finland. The secrets of the world's happiest countries. The 2025 World Happiness Report reveals the truth about the globe's most contented realms and why a holiday could brighten up your outlook. The 2025 World Happiness Report has been revealed, and it's bad news for Britain. What a surprise that is. The annual ranking is based on individuals' own assessments of their lives, and while Finland has nabbed the top spot for the 8th consecutive year, the UK slipped down the table from 20th to 23rd place. So I want to tell you my story about Finland. Apparently Finland is the happiest country on earth. Well, let me tell you something about Finland. I went there on one of our academic jaunts with my husband, and we were, you're just walking through it. Okay, sorry, let's start again. Finland is very underpopulated, really. There aren't many people per mile. And I'm sure that makes a big difference, because I know I'm not happy when I'm in crowds. And, I think a lot of people aren't. Occasionally a football crowd or a party or something, you might be enjoying yourself. But when you are constantly in crowds, when you constantly hear the sound of traffic, like in London, whenever I visited the countryside. I mean, one of the reasons I liked riding was because I could get away from the sound of cars. And so Finland is definitely quieter in many ways. There's more space. You can think and be alone. Right, but the Finnish people aren't what you call very outgoing. We were mostly in Helsinki, and that's the capital. So it was as busy as a town gets for Finland. And you'd be passing people on the street. So like I do in London, because people still do that in London. If there's only a couple of people on the street, now, okay, all right, I'm going back on myself again. If you're walking along a road in London and there are lots and lots of people, you're not smiling at everybody because you can't. There are too many. But as I said, Finland is rather underpopulated. So there are many occasions when I was just walking along the street on my own and there'd be somebody coming towards me, maybe walking a dog, maybe just carrying shopping or just obviously going to work or whatever. And there'd only be us two on that part of the street. Now, in Britain, it's very common then to make some acknowledgement of the other pedestrian. You don't have to be effusive, but you're passing, you nod or something like that. So I did that, and these people passed me with straightforward expressions and absolutely stiff faces, like I didn't exist. After a while, I realised they weren't being rude. That was just the way they did things. Everybody keeping to themselves. Well, I didn't think much of that, really. But one day, we were coming back from visiting some people. We were walking back to our hotel, and a guy was coming towards us. And we were walking along, and I suddenly said to my husband, he's smiling. That man who's coming towards us, he's smiling at us. And I was so astonished at another pedestrian coming towards us and actually smiling that I grabbed my husband's arm and I actually remarked on it. And then he got very close to us and reeled around us to avoid us. And I realised he was dead drunk. Okay, well, that's my story about Finland. And that's the end of the grab bag for another week. Till next time. You can help my channel by subscribing and clicking the notification bell. That's quite important. And by sharing if you're so inclined. Links to my other channels and to donation methods are in the description. But the best way you can help is simply by clicking like and notify. Thank you.